Imagine opening a photo album of your life. You turn the first page expecting to see your 5th birthday. The cake, the candles, your face lit up in that innocent kind of joy. Then your first day of school. Then that summer when you scraped your knee and cried into your mother's shirt. But instead of pictures, there's nothing. Blank pages, white noise, a quiet void where your childhood should be. And what makes it even stranger is this. You know you were there. You know you existed. You know you had a bedroom, teachers, classmates, routines. But when you reach back for it, your mind doesn't replay a scene. It doesn't give you a smell, a sound, a feeling. It gives you silence. So when friends start reminiscing, laughing about the games they played, the trouble they caused, the teacher they hated, you do what you've always done. You smile, you nod, you pretend to remember. Not because you're hiding something, but because you genuinely can't access those files. And if you've lived with this long enough, it eventually turns into a terrifying question you can't unthink. What is wrong with me? Did something terrible happen that I can't remember? Did I repress it? Or is my brain just broken? Here's what I need you to hear clearly. You are not alone, and you are not broken. For many people, missing childhood memories aren't a failure of the mind. They are a strategy, a survival decision made by a brain that had one job: get you through. In this video, we're going to decode the psychology of the missing past, what your brain erased, why it erased it, and how the blank pages may not be emptiness at all, but proof that something inside you fought to keep you alive. Let's begin. Before we go into the darker reasons childhood memories disappear, we have to establish something important. Forgetting the earliest years of your life is normal. If you can't remember your 2nd birthday party, or what you did on a random Tuesday when you were 3, that doesn't mean anything is wrong. That's not repression. That's not trauma. That's biology. Psychologists call it infantile amnesia. The near universal fact that most people can't recall clear, detailed memories from the first years of childhood. And for a long time, scientists were confused by this, because a 3-year-old can learn language, they can build attachments, they can absorb rules, habits, social cues, yet years later, they can't remember what their own life felt like. The reason is that the brain's memory system is still under construction. Deep inside your brain is a structure called the hippocampus. Think of it as your internal librarian. It takes the raw footage of daily life, sounds, faces, emotions, and files it into long-term storage. But in early childhood, that librarian is still training. The hippocampus doesn't fully mature until around age 7, and during those early years, the brain is rapidly building new neural pathways. That growth is powerful, but it also makes memory storage unstable. It's like trying to archive a library while the shelves are still being built. So if your memory gap ends around age 3 or 4, that's normal. But if the blank pages stretch into elementary school, if you can't recall being 7, 8, 9, 10, then biology alone can't explain it. That's when we stop asking what you forgot and start asking why your brain chose not to record. Now here's where things get personal. When people say, "I don't remember my childhood," they often mean very different things. And understanding which kind of memory loss you have is the first step toward understanding why it happened. So I want to give you a simple self-test, not to diagnose you, not to label you, but to help you locate yourself on the map. There are 4 common types of missing childhood memory. Type 1, the total blank. This is the deepest void. When you look back, there's almost nothing. No scenes, no moments, no emotional snapshots. Just a timeline that feels like it never existed. Type 2, the borrowed childhood. You remember through photos, family stories, or what other people told you. You know you had a birthday party because there's a picture of a cake. You know you went on a vacation because someone mentions it. But you can't feel it from the inside. Type 3, the fact-only memory. You can recall basic information, your school's name, where you lived, maybe a teacher's face, but it's cold, mechanical. Like reading Wikipedia about your own life, the emotional texture is missing. Type 4. The fragmented film. You remember a few sharp moments, one Christmas, one scary argument, one random day that sticks, but everything else is disconnected. Like someone cut your childhood into small clips and lost the rest of the footage. Now, here's the test. Close your eyes for a second and try to answer these. Can you picture the inside of your childhood home without seeing a photo? Can you remember the smell of your school hallway? Can you recall what it felt like to wake up on a Saturday morning as a kid? Not what you did, but what it felt like to be you. If you can't access any of that, if it's just darkness or static, pay attention. Because your brain isn't randomly forgetting, it's communicating. And the type of missing you experience often points directly to the mechanism behind it, whether it was survival, emotional shutdown, chronic stress, or something even more silent. Now let's talk about what happens when the brain decides that remembering is too dangerous. Most people have heard of the survival response, fight or flight. Your heart speeds up, your body fills with adrenaline, you either confront the threat or run from it. But there's a third response, one that rarely gets talked about. And for children, it's often the most common. Freeze. Because here's the brutal reality. A child usually can't fight a dangerous adult, and they usually can't escape. So the nervous system chooses the only option left. It shuts down. Imagine a child standing in the hallway while two adults scream behind a closed door. The child can hear plates clinking, a chair scraping, footsteps that sound too heavy, too angry. They hold their breath, their body goes still, their mind goes quiet. Not because they're calm, but because their brain is doing something very specific. It's conserving energy, it's reducing visibility, it's trying to survive by becoming invisible. Freeze is not weakness, freeze is intelligence. And when freeze becomes the default state, not once but repeatedly, something else begins to happen. The child doesn't just freeze their body, they freeze their awareness, they stop fully being there. And that's where memory changes, because memory requires presence. It requires your mind to be connected to the moment, absorbing it, tagging it, saving it. But when your entire nervous system is focused on danger, your brain stops acting like a camera and starts acting like a shield. This is the pivot point, the moment survival overrides recording. And once you understand freeze, the next concept will make perfect sense. Because freeze doesn't just silence your body, it can silence your entire sense of reality. And that silence has a name. When freeze becomes chronic, when danger, instability, or emotional overwhelm becomes the background noise of childhood, the brain develops a skill that is both terrifying and brilliant. It's called dissociation. Dissociation is what happens when your mind disconnects from the present moment. Not because you're dramatic, not because you're weak, but because reality is too heavy to carry. Think of it like this. If your house gets struck by lightning, the circuit breaker trips. The lights go out, not to punish you, but to prevent the whole system from burning down. Dissociation is the brain's circuit breaker. When a child is trapped in something they can't process, abuse, screaming, chaos, humiliation, fear, the brain does something radical. It says, "I'm leaving." The body stays in the room, but awareness floats away. This can take different forms. Sometimes it's shut down. Your mind goes blank. Emotions go numb. You become strangely calm in moments that should terrify you. Sometimes it's derealization. The world feels unreal, like you're watching life through glass. Everything looks normal, but it feels distant. And sometimes it's depersonalization. You don't feel like yourself. It's like you're observing your body from the outside, like you're watching someone else play your role. Here's the key point. Memory requires presence. To encode a memory, your brain has to be inside the experience, tracking what happened, attaching emotions, storing it as a living moment. But dissociation removes you from the experience while it's happening. So later, when you try to remember, There is nothing to retrieve. Not because the memory was erased after the fact, but because it was never fully recorded in the first place. This is what psychologists call dissociative amnesia. And it doesn't always mean you forget the event completely. Sometimes you keep the fact, the semantic record. You can say, yes, my parents fought a lot, or yes, I was bullied, but you can't recall it as a scene. You can't feel it. No smell, no sound, no inner video, just information. And if you're listening to this thinking, that's me, I want you to understand something important. This wasn't your brain failing you. This was your brain protecting you. Because if you had been forced to fully feel everything you lived through every day, your nervous system would have collapsed. So your mind created distance, it built a wall, and the silence you hate today may have been the fortress that kept you alive back then. Now let's name something that confuses a lot of people, because many of you do remember parts of childhood, yet it still feels like you don't. That's because memory has two layers. Semantic memory is knowledge, facts, information, labels. You might know the name of your elementary school. You might know your parents argued. You might know you moved houses when you were 9. But episodic memory is different. Episodic memory is the experience, the scene, the inner movie, the smell of the classroom, the feeling in your stomach, the way the light looked through the window that day. And trauma, especially dissociation, an emotional shutdown, often creates a split. It allows you to keep the facts, but lose the feeling. So you can tell your story like a report, but you can't relive it. It's not warmth, it's not texture, it's not a memory you can step into. It's like reading a timeline about a stranger who happens to share your name. And this is why so many people feel crazy. They ask, if I know it happened, why can't I feel it? Because the emotional system, the part that makes memories vivid, was offline when it mattered. Your brain didn't just forget childhood, it separated your history from your heart. And once you understand that, the next cause of missing memories becomes even clearer. Because sometimes it isn't fear that erased the feeling. Sometimes it was absence. At this point, some of you might be thinking, okay, trauma makes sense, dissociation makes sense, but I wasn't abused. My parents didn't hit me. There was no screaming. No one touched me. No one threatened my life. So why does my childhood still feel like blank pages? This is where we talk about the most common and most invisible cause of missing childhood memory: emotional neglect. And emotional neglect is tricky because it isn't defined by what happened to you. It's defined by what didn't happen. Trauma is often an injury. Neglect is often a starvation. The absence of comfort, the absence of attunement, the absence of anyone noticing what you felt and caring enough to respond. Because here's the truth. Memory is emotional. Your brain saves moments that carry emotional weight. Joy, fear, pride, shame, love, grief. Emotion is the glue that tells the hippocampus, this matters, keep it. Now imagine growing up in a home where nothing is emotionally dangerous, but nothing is emotionally alive either. A home that is flat, sterile, indifferent. This can happen in a few different ways. 1. The cold home. Parents provide food, school, clothing, everything on paper looks fine. But warmth is missing. Hugs are rare. Conversations are functional. You learn early. Don't need too much. 2. The busy home. Your parents aren't cruel. They're overwhelmed, always working, always stressed. There's no room for your inner world. You become quiet because being quiet is easier. 3. The emotion-denying home. This one is subtle and brutal. You feel something and immediately get shut down. You had to stop crying. You're too sensitive. Don't be dramatic. Other kids have it worse. So you learn to disconnect from your own emotions, not because you want to, but because your emotions don't have a safe place to land. And when your life lacks emotional resonance, something strange happens in the brain. Your mind stops tagging moments as save-worthy. It's like a security camera that only records when there's motion. If there's no emotional motion, no validation, no deep joy, no safe sadness. Your system goes into low power mode. Days blur together, weeks disappear, years evaporate. Not because you're repressing a horror, but because you are surviving in an emotional desert. And here's what makes emotional neglect so painful. You can't point to the bruise. You can't name the moment. You just grow up with a quiet emptiness and think it's your personality. But it's not your personality. It's your nervous system adapting to the message you received repeatedly. What you feel doesn't matter. And when a child believes their feelings don't matter, their memories begin to disappear with them. Now let's go back to biology, but this time, not the normal biology of childhood, the biology of chronic stress. Because even if there was no single traumatic event, living in a home that felt unpredictable can slowly rewire a developing brain. Maybe your parents argued constantly. Maybe there was addiction. Maybe money was always tight. Maybe you had to read the room before you spoke, just to avoid setting someone off. When a child lives like this, the body releases stress hormones, especially cortisol. In small doses, cortisol is useful. It helps you focus. It helps you react quickly. But when cortisol stays high for years, when stress becomes your baseline, cortisol stops being helpful. It becomes neurotoxic. Research shows prolonged stress can affect the hippocampus, the exact brain structure responsible for forming and organizing memories. In other words, the environment doesn't just feel stressful, it can physically change the architecture of the brain. And here's where it gets even more heartbreaking. A stressed child doesn't develop like a peaceful child, because the brain has limited resources and it has to choose what matters most. So instead of building rich autobiographical memory, you're in a diary, it builds something else. Hypervigilance. You become a radar. You can detect subtle shifts in tone. You can sense danger before anyone else sees it. You can read faces like subtitles, but ask you what you did when you were 8 blank. Because your brain wasn't designed to record childhood like a scrapbook. It was designed to scan childhood like a battlefield. That's why so many adults who grew up in chaotic homes have this strange combination. They're emotionally sharp, socially perceptive, highly intuitive, yet their childhood memories are scattered, faint or missing, not because they're forgetful, because their brain had a more urgent job than remembering, staying safe. And here's the part that makes everything click for a lot of people. Even when your mind can't remember, your body might. You may not have pictures of childhood in your head, no scenes, no clear stories, but put you in the right situation and suddenly your body reacts like it's back there. A raised voice and your chest tightens, a slammed door and your stomach drops, a certain tone of disappointment and your throat closes like you're about to cry, even though nothing big happened. This is called body memory. Trauma isn't only stored as images. Sometimes it's stored as sensations, as reflexes, as survival wiring. So if you've ever told yourself, "I don't know why I'm like this," but your nervous system keeps responding as if danger is near, that doesn't mean you're broken. It means your body has been speaking a language your mind had to forget. And once you understand that, you stop chasing lost scenes and start listening to what your body has been trying to protect. So if your childhood feels like blank pages, hear this. You are not defective, you are adaptive. Sometimes the brain forgets because remembering would have been too dangerous. Sometimes it forgets because nothing felt safe enough to save. And healing doesn't always mean recovering every memory. Healing can simply mean understanding why the pages went blank and learning to create safety, connection, and emotional life now. Because the first chapter of your story might be written in invisible ink, but the pen is in your hand today. If this resonated with you, leave a comment. Which of the 4 memory types fits you best? And subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden psychology of the human mind. Thank you for watching.